Rasan is here or
great.
joining.
Great. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to hang out for a minute while we're getting started. I'm going to keep letting people in. Welcome, welcome. Happy Monday.
Morning.
Morning.
Happy Monday. Hi, Jane.
Oh, Mary, you're here. I'm going to
Everyone.
make you a co-host so you can help let people in. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you want. We are just going to hang out for a second while we open the floodgates and let everybody in. Feel free to get a snack, get your coffee, get your cozy blanket. Okay, we're just rolling in. I always feel so popular when we host these parties and so many people show up. So I'll just do a quick little something while we're waiting. So today is about connecting folks to mainstream benefits. I'm going to say it now. I'm going to say it again. Somebody's going to ask. You can help me remind people. Are we going to have a recording of this shared out afterwards? Yes. Are we going to share out the slides? Yes. We will send all of that out to everyone that's registered, not even just people that attended. So somebody will ask. I'll put it in the chat. You're welcome to inform your colleagues that yes, in fact, you will get all sorts of goodies at the end of this. And we're just letting a few more folks in. And I think we can like do our gentle roll into the beginning and then we'll do some more. Hold on one second. Let me get all the way to the beginning. You don't need to see this yet. And okay, my slide's working. You see okay, main slide. We're recording. I think we've got everybody, as we like to say, we are cooking with gas. Okay, so welcome everybody to the last training of 2024. What? I don't know how we got there, but we did it. This is a really important training, and I'm going to do a little framing in the beginning of why this information is so important, and then you're going to get a lot of detail. But this is really about connecting clients or participants to mainstream benefits. And I'll start out by saying, sorry, I forgot a little housekeeping. So I'm Jamie Jeanette. I'm with Health, Housing, and Homeless Services for Contra Costa County. We put together trainings all year for all of our homeless continuum of care providers. So we do lots of trainings throughout the year. They're pretty much always the second Monday of the month from 10 a.m. to noon. They're on Zoom. We do recordings. You're going to get the slide deck and everything later. But these are all, basically all the trainings we offer are required for providers because it's either something that HUD, the federal government, requires, or it's something that we as a community have decided is really important. We're going to keep everybody muted unless we are opening up for questions, just to keep the hubbub to a minimum. So I want to give you just a quick overview of what we're going to do today. So at the end of this training, ideally, you will understand why mainstream benefits are essential for people experiencing homelessness. You're going to understand what benefits may be available and how to help people get connected to them. You're going to learn how to help folks overcome barriers to enrollment and staying, continuing to have the benefits, and helping identify who can help if there are issues. So quick overview. Why are these important? Why do we even do a training like this? So publicly funded services, programs, and entitlements for low-income folks, these include things like income and employment, housing, food and nutrition, health and behavioral health services, child welfare, and transportation. They're important because they can be a primary source of income and health services. They help predict having a steady source of income can really help bolster stability. So you all know this. If folks don't know what income they have, it's really hard to figure out housing. Getting connected to these benefits may actually help them get or retain housing because they can then spend less of their disposable income on, for example, food, if they can then put it towards housing. and increased independence and well-being. Here's a little bit about the benefits. So I'm not going to talk in detail, but one of the things that HUD, our largest funder of homeless housing and services, looks at is what are we actually as a system of care connecting people to? So they look at cash income sources and non-cash benefits. So this is a thing we report out to the federal government at the end of every year. Like these are all the things that people got connected to. And then just, this is very high level, but sort of this three-step approach of part of your role is helping assess people to figure out like what might be a good fit, help connect them to, and you're going to hear about how to connect people in to find out what benefits they can get, and then helping them maintain. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our partners from Employment and Human Services Department to talk us through the good stuff.
Great, thank you. My name is Nancy Powers. I'm a workforce services specialist with Contra Costa County Employment and Human Services. And I'll pass it over to Rosalind to introduce herself as well.
Good morning. I'm Rosalind Guillory, and I'm also a workforce services specialist with Contra Costa County Employment and Human Services and our policy team.
So this morning we are, Roz and I particularly are here to talk about our CalFresh, CalWorks, and Medi-Cal programs. We do have some other staff from our department that will talk about other programs later in this presentation. Again, the information we're sharing today, Jamie had mentioned at the start of the meeting, will be shared with you. The slides will be shared with everyone. So please feel free once you receive the slides to check out the information a little more in depth. In regards to the slide that's on the screen right now, it's talking about where to start, and you will hear all of us reference these two websites, ehsd.org or Benefits Cal. You'll hear us reference these all throughout the presentation today. ehsd.org is Contra Costa County Employment and Human Services website, external website, which has not only the information we're presenting today, but other information above and beyond what we're presenting. So we highly encourage everyone to jump on to ehsd.org and really look around and see what's there. There are a plethora of resources, and that is the first point that we would like to direct you to in regards to finding out about our various programs. Benefits Cal is our actual application system. So that is the system that we ask our customers, our community-based organizations to utilize to actually apply for CalFresh, CalWorks, General Assistance, all those programs that we offer. We also encourage our customers to create a benefitscal.com account so they can access communications from their worker, they can access notices of action, and other information that we share with them directly in their case. It also gives them an opportunity to upload various documents, particularly a SAR-7, which is a semi-annual report that is required for our programs. So we do encourage our customers to utilize the benefits of Benefits Cal. It's really fantastic and works seamlessly for us. So it's a great opportunity. Next slide. So we'll start off with CalFresh, and we really kind of want to focus more on CalFresh this morning. We were talking with Jamie earlier, we just really want to encourage our community to support just our community at large to encourage individuals to apply for CalFresh. As we know, prices are going up, food is expensive, it's hard enough to afford food, let alone for our homeless population. So we really want to encourage connecting our community at large who may qualify for CalFresh to Benefits Cal to apply for benefits online, but we'll talk about other ways that they can apply. So to give a general overview, CalFresh is the name of federally funded food stamp program. It used to be called food stamps. Federally, it's called SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, but for California, it's referred to as CalFresh. Next slide. So the purpose of CalFresh is really the first line of defense against hunger. It allows low-income households to be able to purchase food, and it's obviously very critical for households to make that transition from receiving that assistance to help them purchase food to eventually, with the hope to transition off and be able to afford food from their own income. However, if not, there's that supplement that's there for them. So we really encourage anyone that may even think that they qualify to submit an application, and we can determine if they're eligible or not. Next slide. So CalFresh really enhances a family's budget for food. It allows it allows them to purchase their food for the month or to supplement the food depending on their household size and the income that they have. CalFresh can be used to buy food items such as fruit, vegetables, meats, things like that, and also seeds and plants to grow for the household to grow their own food to eat. CalFresh typically cannot be used to buy hot foods or lunch counter items. And it can't be used to buy non-food items like alcohol, tobacco, medicine, soap, diapers, things of that nature. Next slide. So the 4 basic steps of a CalFresh application are for someone to actually complete the CalFresh application. And we'll talk about the different ways that one can do that in just a moment. Then the individual would complete an eligibility interview. They would be determined eligible by a worker, and then if they are eligible to CalFresh, they would be given an EBT card to access their CalFresh benefits. Next slide. So this slide, I think, would be a really good resource for everyone on this call. When you do receive your copy of your PowerPoint, this gives you the references needed to apply online at Benefits Cal, or you can download an application on ehsd.org, complete that application, and then that can either be dropped off at an office or it can be submitted to an office by mail. A participant can apply over the phone. The 3rd bullet down shows the phone number. Application can also be faxed, or of course, someone can go into the office and drop off an application at a local district office. If an interview is required, then a worker will contact the participant and then ask for any necessary verifications that they need depending on the household type. And then once we get all the information we need from the customer, then we will determine if they're eligible. So various types of information needed are, let's say, verification of paying rent, and not all the time, just sometimes. Verification of income, Social Security number, ID number, things of that nature. So we need to get basic information and then determine what's going on in the household. Next slide. So when the worker is looking at CalFresh eligibility, we have to look at residency, and we have to ensure that the individual is living in California, at least, doesn't necessarily have to be Contra Costa County. We do have to have their Social Security number. We have to determine if they are required to be work registered. Right now, there is a federal waiver from someone having to participate in work registration unless they're a student, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But we're expecting that waiver to go away at the end of the year in October of 2025, actually, next year. Sorry, I'm thinking future. So when I say the end of the year, I'm thinking next fiscal year. Sorry. We also have to review an individual's alienage or citizenship status, the household composition, meaning are they a single adult? Are they married? Are they with a girlfriend or boyfriend? Do they have children? Are they living with their parents? We'll look at the whole situation as far as the household is concerned to determine CalFresh eligibility. We also look at the income, which is earned and unearned. We look at income deductions, which we'll talk about in a few slides. And then we look at resource limits. So most households, we won't look at the resources unless we're evaluating expedited services, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But when we are looking at resources, there are certain families that have a maximum of $2,750 for households. And then if the household has an elderly or disabled individual in the household, then the property limit is $4,250. Next slide. So in regards to citizenship, a CalFresh individual must either be a U.S. citizen or an eligible legal non-citizen. So there are certain eligibility criteria for eligible non-citizens. And some of the examples are the bullets at the bottom of this slide. So acceptable verifications would be an I-551 card, which is a permanent resident card, an I-94, an I-151, or I-668. There are other eligible, or excuse me, verifications that we can receive that would make someone allow them to be eligible for CalFresh, but it really is very individualized, depends on the circumstance, and it depends on what ORR has issued for the participant. So if you do have a legal non-citizen that is applying for CalFresh, please, or that is interested in it, please have them apply and let us make the determination based on the information that we have from the federal government to determine if they're eligible. We really want to make sure that if they are eligible, that we can go ahead and get them connected to food. Next slide. So I kind of touched on this a little bit. In regards to the household composition, we look at the family, if someone's living with a spouse, with children, with siblings, how they're related by blood or by marriage, or maybe not at all. If there are children under the age of 2, someone has their mic on. If there are children under the age of 22 living with their parent, they have to be included in the CalFresh household. And then individuals who purchase and prepare their meals together typically are considered one household. So oftentimes that would be if you have a couple that's not married and they purchase and prepare their meals together, we would have them as one household. Maybe you have friends that live together and they all purchase and prepare together, maybe cousins, they purchase and prepare together. They would all be one household and we would have them on one application. Next slide. In regards to household compositions for our homeless population, what we look at is a lot of these are very familiar with all of us. If they are homeless, they lack a fixed or a regular nighttime residence. They're in a supervised shelter or some sort of SLE, or they are sleeping in a place that is not an accommodation for someone to sleep in, like a hallway or a bus station or a lobby or something of that nature. And that's where we would consider a family or an individual homeless if they are residing in any of these areas. In regards to excluded members, it's not on this slide, but I did want to share that excluded members are considered ineligible non-citizens, so they don't have the necessary legal permanent resident verification that qualifies them for CalFresh. They are intentional program violators, meaning at some point in their history of receipt of CalFresh, they have intentionally violated the policies and the regulations for CalFresh. They are fleeing felon, or they have some sort of parole violation that excludes them from being CalFresh eligible. Next slide. So our students are eligible to CalFresh. However, as well as going to school, they also need to be working at least 20 hours per week on average, or a total of 80 hours per month. Unfortunately, students can't just qualify for CalFresh without being involved in some sort of employment or work study or something of that nature. We have a fantastic relationship with our local community colleges, and we also have a contract with Rubicon and Opportunity Junction especially Rubicon, to connect our students to work study to make sure that they are able to meet the qualification for student eligibility for CalFresh. So when we do have our students that are applying for CalFresh, or maybe their parents and they're living at home, we make sure that we try to give our students as many resources as possible so they can meet that need and qualify for CalFresh. We certainly don't want to exclude them. And we also work closely with all 3 of our local colleges to connect our students to CalFresh and make sure that we remove those barriers from exclusion of CalFresh. So we're really making it I know this is a statewide emphasis, but also within Contra Costa County, we're really trying to make sure our students are connected to CalFresh benefits. Next slide. So in regards to CalFresh, what we look at when we're making the determination for how much somebody will receive each month is we'll look at the household's income. So we'll look at their earned income, their unearned income, and that's for the entire household. And then we will look at the deductions that are available to them. So some of the deductions are listed on this slide here. This is not all inclusive, but this does give you an idea of some of the deductions that are available. So when someone has employment, we automatically deduct 20% of their income that's earned through employment. Self-employment, we deduct 40% from their self-employment, or they can elect to have their actual deductions deducted if they feel it's more than 40%. So they would provide receipts or verification to us if they feel like it's more than 40%. As far as shelter, we consider rent, mortgage, property taxes, HOA fees, utilities. Obviously, you can see there's electricity and garbage and phone, childcare expenses, and then any medical expenses. So we try to consider all of those expenses that a family has before we make that determination, not only for eligibility, but the amount that we would issue for a family or an individual. Next slide. So when someone applies, they can request expedited services. And this means that we would issue their CalFresh benefits within 3 days from the date that they apply. So if a CalFresh individual is applying for CalFresh, or excuse me, if an individual is applying for CalFresh and they indicate that their income is less than $150 a month and their resources are less than $100 a month, or their income that they earn or that they have in their household is less than the cost of their shelter and utility, or if they're a migrant or seasonal farm worker household with less than $100 in resources, which we really don't have in Contra Costa County, but we wanted to include that in there, then they may be eligible for expedited services. So if so, you can go to the next slide. We would, like I mentioned, process the expedited services within 3 days from the date that they applied. If we find that they are not eligible to expedited services, then we would process their CalFresh application within 30 days from their date of application. Next slide. Thank you. So the EBT card is an actual card that looks like an ATM card, or that's old school, debit card that we receive, that participants are mailed, they're sent the card in the mail, and it allows them to access their benefits at any vendor that accepts EBT, which is most grocery stores, a lot of local convenience stores, Amazon, Walmart, you can shop online, things of that nature. So there's a lot of ways that our families are able to access food benefits once they get their EBT card. There is a lot of EBT theft, so we do ask that please remind your participants never to give their PIN to anybody. The county never calls and asks for a card number. They never ask for a PIN number. So please reassure your customers or your participants never to give that information out if anyone calls for that information. If they do feel that their benefits have been either skimmed or scammed, we ask that they contact their worker right away so we can walk them through the process of requesting that those benefits be replaced. So what happens is when a participant is approved for CalFresh, their EBT card is mailed to them, and then they select their PIN by contacting a phone number from a sticker that's posted on the front of the EBT card. We can go to the next slide. If they need in an emergency situation to pick up a card, they can ask their worker, and their worker will have them have a card printed in the office, and they will set their PIN at the office. Replacement cards are either mailed directly to them, or they can also be created at an EHSD office. But please keep in mind that the state has issued guidance that we will not change PINs for any cards if a participant lives in another county. There was a lot of fraud where, unfortunately, individuals who were committing the fraud were calling out of county to try to get a PIN reset. We were allowed to do, all counties were allowed to do that at the time, and that turned into a fraud situation. So the state has asked that no out-of-county PIN resets be made. So if you have any customers that need a PIN reset, please make sure that if they're living in Contra Costa County, that they will they contact their worker here in Contra Costa County or any of the offices here to have their PIN reset. And then This slide also gives the phone number where customers can call. So this will be for your reference when the slides are issued to you. And then we wanted to share this information so you had an idea of when someone's CalFresh benefits are issued to them. So once the CalFresh is approved, then the participant can look at the last number of their case number, and depending on that number, the CalFresh benefits will be available on that coinciding date each month. So if, obviously, as the slide shows, if their last number of their case number is a 5, then they will get their CalFresh benefits on the 5th day of every month. So as you can imagine, issuing benefits for the entire state of California on the first day of the month is too much of an impact for the state system. So this has been staggered for many, many years, and it works very well. So customers still receive their issuance every month, every 30 days or so, give or take the number of days per month. But it is consistent based on the last number of their case number. And then this slide just provides some resources for you in regards to the USDA. Of course, we work closely with the food bank of Contra Costa and Solano. They're a wonderful partner that helps us connect our community, but this also provides some information for you. Thank you.
We have a quick little quiz for folks, and you can put your answer in the chat. So CalFresh benefits are issued monthly based on A, the day of the month the customer applied, B, the day of the month CalFresh was approved, C, the last number of the customer's case number, or D, a random selection. So put your answers in the chat. Let's see. We're seeing a lot of folks say C. Ooh, people were listening. Excellent. Yes, correct. As you just heard. So if people are not sure about when they're going to get their benefits, you can help them. Have them look at their case number. I think, am I correct? You all want to take questions at the very end?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay.
And we will also circle back around to the questions in the chat as well.
Great.
I did want to mention with the different programs we're covering today, this is a high level overview of information. Each case is different. Each application is different. So we really do encourage individuals to apply and allow their worker to make the determination for any program that they apply for. We really encourage it, and we want to support our community. So please don't stick to this eligibility, these slides that we have here, as it expands so much greater than what we are able to present here today. Thank you.
Good morning. So awesome. Everybody got the correct answer. They were paying attention. That's really great. For CalWorks, I'm not going to be as extensive because really, as Nancy said, our focus is really trying to address food insecurity, among other things. But as we evaluate customers for CalFresh benefits, we also evaluate them for other program services. And so I'm going to be talking about CalWorks. So CalWorks is designed to promote and encourage work for families so that they can become self-sufficient. It is a form of financial aid with the focus being on families with minor children if they lack financial support. And then we also want to make sure that we have supports in place to be able to protect and preserve the family. And it's really an opportunity for the family for us to help them with address any challenges or barriers that they may be facing while they're receiving services from us. And we make sure that those families that have children who cannot live on their own in their homes, we try to find the best services and resources for those families as possible to meet their needs. Next slide. So for eligibility, we have some high-level kind of categories that our workers look at. We first have to look to see if there's deprivation, and that is where we look to see if there's a parent, if the children are deprived of any parental support or care because there's at least one parent that's maybe deceased, incapacitated, or the parent is not working, less than 100 hours a month, or there's a parent that's continually absent from the home. And we evaluate that for single parent households and also 2-parent households, particularly around the employment piece to determine if they meet eligibility based on hours that have to be evaluated for that. And of course, age. There have to be children in the home that are under the age of 18. And if they're not, they have to be in school and be expected to graduate before they turn 19. And the other area that our staff look at is property, similar to CalFresh. All of the components have a property piece that's looked at for eligibility. And so for families that have elderly members in their household, that limit is going to be 10,201. That's combined personal and real property. And then, excuse me, without elderly members. And then those households that have elderly members, those that are 60 years of age or older, the limit is a little bit higher. It's 15,317. Next slide, please. So our application process for CalWorks is in terms of how you can apply those very same ways. But what we look at is having the families complete an application. There's a eligibility CalWorks packet that they have to fill out with their eligibility worker. They have to meet all of the conditions in order for us to determine whether or not they're eligible. And that includes things like we have to have a social security number, or they have to have applied for one. We have to verify citizenship or their legal immigration status. Of course, we look at their income and property levels. If there's a potential that they may be eligible to unemployment benefits or other unearned income, they have to apply for that. And also there is a requirement to cooperate with the district attorney for child support if there's an absent parent in the home. Next slide. Some of the documentation that's needed, this is not all encompassing for CalWorks, but generally for our applications for CalWorks, we're looking at if the individual has a driver's license or an identification card for each parent or caretaker that's in the home. Of course, their social security number or cards, as I mentioned before. Birth certificates helps us to determine the degree of relationship. It's required. Immunization records for children that are age 6 or younger. And we look at if they have vehicles, who are those vehicles registered to, if they're registered to the applicant members. We also look at if they have any real property, land and such. We would need documentation for that, as well as any receipts or bills that they have showing that maybe they've recently sold property such as boats, trailers, motorhomes, etc. So there are income limits for CalWorks, and it really is going to vary based on the household size. So this is just in general. CalWorks does allow a gross income limit, which is determined by subtracting 450. We call it an income disregard. $450 from the earned income of each employed person. So for example, if someone is making $900 a month, we would only look at entering in $450 towards their eligibility budget to determine their benefits. And then we add all the remaining earned income to determine that family's gross income for their eligibility. The amount is then looked at against the state's minimum basic standard of adequate quick care, or we call it the MBSAC. We talk a lot in acronyms. And that's just a standard based on what the state sets for each family size. And then if the family's total gross income after we do the 450 deduction exceeds that level, then the family would not be considered eligible. And when I talked about the earned income disregard, this is not how we would normally apply an earned income disregard ongoing. This is just for the application process to waive that initial portion of their earnings to determine if they're initially eligible. And then ongoing, there is a component that's called the earned income disregard. So next slide, please. There are property limits, as I mentioned before. Families without elderly members, their limit is 10,888. That's a combination of both personal property, like their checking accounts, or real estate, real property for the family. And then, of course, if there's elderly members in the home, 60 years of age or older, there's a combined personal and real property limit of 16,333. Of furniture, clothing, appliances, that's considered exempt. And then, of course, the family, if they live in a home and they own their home, it is exempt. And then if they have an automobile, if the value is less than $32,045, that's exempt as well. Next slide. Residency is a requirement, and so there's no durational residency requirement. So someone's being here, they've established residency, whether it's been 6 months or longer. We look at, long as they're residents here in California. And if they intend to live in California, then they might be eligible for CalWORKs. And then their families have to meet the legal residence requirements of being legally here in the United States to receive benefits. And then we approve benefits. Once we approve CalWORKs benefits, they're issued on to the customer's EBT card, as you heard about in the CalFresh piece. The benefits are paid between the first and the third calendar day of the month. A little bit different. That scheduling that Nancy showed, it's kind of like the timeline there for when benefits are going to be paid out. We can move. And for our CalWORKs program, similar to CalFresh, although there's a waiver right now for CalFresh, as Nancy mentioned, for Welfare to Work, there is a mandatory employment services or Welfare to Work component for those individuals that are identified as work eligible adults. So if they are underemployed or unemployed parents, they will be working with an employment specialist to do services that are geared towards work, ultimately with the goal of helping them become self-sufficient. We also have barrier removal services for those individuals that are participating in our Welfare to Work program. We offer things like domestic violence services, mental health, substance use, substance misuse services, English as a second language. And as Nancy mentioned, we work really closely with quite a few community partners, the adult schools, as well as the local community colleges to support those that are in our Welfare to Work program. And then all of our participants that are receiving Welfare to Work services are entitled to supportive services such as transportation, advancement, or reimbursement, ancillary support where we pay for things like uniforms, books for school and supplies. There's also a piece where folks get diaper stipends. That's just automated. And we also provide stage 1 childcare, which is certified childcare for families. They only have to certify once a year. And so that helps remove some of those barriers for families so that they have their childcare, transportation, and other supportive services in place so that they can engage in activities to help them become self-sufficient. Next slide. So here we are. Time to check your knowledge.
Okay.
And I said this early on. The last one we kind of put it right at the end. So let's see where we're at.
This is the test. So immunization records are required for each child. A, if they're under 24 months, B, for school-age children, or C, under the age of 6. You can put your answers in the chat. So I see a lot of folks saying C. This group is listening. Well done. Yes, for children under the age of 6, immunization records are required. Good job, team.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy.
Great, thank you. Good job, everybody. All right, so in regards to Medi-Cal, when talking about Medi-Cal, I know we've said throughout our presentation thus far, we really encourage our community to apply for benefits. In regards to Medi-Cal, there are so many ways that we can determine eligibility for a family, for an individual. We ask that if any health insurance is needed and they even feel that they may be eligible for Medi-Cal, please have them apply. There are a lot of loopholes in a good way for Medi-Cal, and where a parent may qualify for Medi-Cal under one program. And of course, it would be through a particular service provider, but as far as eligibility is concerned, the parent may qualify under one set of eligibility rules where the children qualify under another, where a spouse qualifies for another. There's a plethora of different types of ways to become eligible for Medi-Cal. So we really encourage our community to apply for Medi-Cal. If we do find that a family or an individual does not qualify, we will refer them over to the resources needed for the healthcare under the Affordable Care Act. So we will really connect our community to health insurance when needed. We all know how important that is. So Medi-Cal is California's Medicaid healthcare program. When you hear the term Medicaid, in California, we call it Medi-Cal. So the program pays for a variety of medical services for children and adults, and it's supported by federal and state income taxes. Medi-Cal is for adults who are 65 years of age or older, adults who are parents or caretaker relatives that have any children who are under the age of 21 living in the home, adults who are legally blind or disabled, children birth through age 20, or individuals age 26, between 26 and 50, are also eligible for full scope Medi-Cal regardless of immigration status. So though we kind of pulled these bullets out and gave an array of who's eligible to Medi-Cal, basically pretty much everybody's eligible to Medi-Cal as long as they have, they meet the eligibility requirements, which really falls under income requirements. Thankfully, there have been some changes under the Affordable Care Act and with our state legislation, and that's really expanded our Medi-Cal to, you might have heard these terms, to two different kinds of Medi-Cal, one being Magi, one being non-Magi. There are no property evaluations for either, so we don't look at anybody's home, we don't look at their bank accounts, we don't look at their car value, we don't look at anything like that for either Magi or non-Magi. So that's been a big change for Medi-Cal eligibility. It's really based on the household composition and the income in the household. So again, you can see, please refer anyone that you know that needs medical insurance, please refer them to apply for benefits. Next slide. So in regards to Medicare, Medicare is health insurance program for people 65 years of age or older, some people with disabilities under age 65, and then individuals who have end-stage renal disease. Next slide. So this slide provides an overview of the eligibility for Medicare, and Medicare eligibility includes the insurance for themselves or their spouse. They have worked at least 10 years in some sort of Medicare covered employment. They're at least 65, and they're a citizen or permanent resident of the United States. If they are under 65, if they've received SSDI for 2 years or longer, they may be eligible for Medicare. And then again, if the individual has end-stage renal disease, they would be eligible for Medicare. And then in regards to applying, again, we've talked about this throughout the presentation thus far. Please have individuals either apply through Benefits Cal at ehsd.org. They can call the phone number that was offered earlier on the slides. They can come into an office. They can fax an application. There's a lot of different ways to apply for Medi-Cal.
Okay, that was a quick one. Here we go with the
knowledge.
quiz.
Yeah, it was.
A property evaluation is required for a non-Magi Medi-Cal eligibility determination. True or false? Put your answers in the
Good.
chat.
Patrick jumped right in there. I think that was Patrick. Like, good. That's good responses. Yeah.
All right. Is that true or is this a mistake? Is this a correct answer that it's true that a property evaluation is required?
No, it should be false.
Yes, I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't look right.
I think the circle was put in the wrong place on my end. Sorry about that.
Just kidding. We'll fix that. I was like, wait, I think I know the answer, but I don't think that's it. All right.
Everybody got
see,
it right.
We're just testing to see if you're paying attention. Okay. Thank you.
Trick question.
Yes, exactly. Okay, GA.
Hi, I'm Magdalene Gable. I'm the analyst for the GA program. I also serve the advocacy program, CAPI, which is the Cash Assistance Program for Immigrants, and our internment program that provides indigent cremation for county residents that are not able to pay for their own services for cremation. Okay, so GA, we are a short-term employment-focused program for people unable to sustain gainful employment, and they have no other means of support. And they're usually people who don't qualify for any other public assistance program. So most of our folks are individuals with, if they have no children in the home, they would be grown children. The program provides aid so these individuals are able to try to find gainful employment. We try to get them to apply for additional sources of supports because the GA benefit amount is very low. So if they qualify for things such as Social Security, the supplemental security income, or the state supplemental payments, we encourage them to, well, they must apply for those things because if there's any available income, then they have to apply for any potential available income because we want to make sure that they have a long-term source of support if they are disabled. GA is technically a loan program and must be repaid. However, I want people to know that the repayment process is usually only done through the SSI recoupment process. So what that means is when somebody applies for SSI and they're on GA and they applied for SSI, and once they get granted, we discontinue them off of GA, but the money that they have received while on GA, Social Security pays us back as part of the lump sum that the individual will receive. So there's a form that they have to sign, and that's where the loan part of the program comes in. So sometimes people get a little concerned about the loan program. They think that they're going to be garnished or tax intercept, and that's not the case. GA applicants are typically single, unemployed adults, like I said, with no dependents, and are often disabled. Next slide. So there's several ways to apply for general assistance. So you can go to the website that I believe Nancy mentioned before, that is Benefits Cal, and they can apply for GA through that portal. They can also request that a paper application be mailed, or they can also download an application. Says CalFresh, but for GA and CalFresh, all the programs they can if they go to EHSD and they go to the benefits tab, there's a place to go onto the GA page. And there's a variety of forms that they can do. And one of them is the application that they can download and fill out, and then they can send in, or they can upload it to Benefits Cal if they've made an account. And they can also go into any employment and human services district office location, whether it's in Antioch, Richmond, or Pleasant Hill. There are two numbers that they can call that will, excuse me, that will trigger a GA appointment to be scheduled. They can, and that what happens is then once they call, a GA application will be mailed to them, and an appointment notice with an appointment date and time. Otherwise, they can call after they've completed the application, and they can kind of see if they can get scheduled on the phone. Typically, we just wait till they do the application so that so the application has been sent out so that we can make sure that they have the information and they can fill out as much of the application as possible, because that will make the interview go quicker. The intake appointment is over the phone. Unless the applicant expressly states they want to be seen in person, then they would have to come down to one of the district offices, but they don't have to. Next slide. So the eligibility for general assistance. Anyone a resident of Contra Costa may be eligible for GA as long as they meet the minimum eligibility qualifications. And these are the following minimum qualifications. Basically, they have to be a legal resident of Contra Costa County for at least 15 days, a legal permanent resident or U.S. citizen. So if you're an LPR, that's fine. Unfortunately, if you are an undocumented, you would not be eligible for general assistance. Be at least 18 years of age, and if you're under 18, be legally married. If you're over 65, you can still apply, but you will have to apply for SSI and be disqualified or denied from SSI or any other categorical assistance. And that, if you're over 65, you also, this is referring, this sentence about categorical assistance due to immigration status, that only applies to CAPI. So if you're an individual who is an immigrant from another country and you're applying for GA, you have to apply for Social Security, for SSI, and be denied solely based on your immigration status, because somebody who is going to be eligible to CAPI is not going to be eligible to SSI. So in order for us to move forward with their GA application, they would have to make sure they get a denial letter from SSI. They can be on parole or probation, but not in violation of said status. So they can't be a fleeing felon or anything like that. But if they're on parole or probation, they can be eligible to GA. Okay, next slide. Some of the income eligibility limits. So applicants can have a vehicle, but it must be valued under $4,500. We take a look at all combined liquid and non-liquid assets. So if they have other property, that's of value, or money in the bank, any kind of liquid and non-liquid assets, it has to be less than $500. They have to have less than $50 on their person, or $50 in the bank. So part of that 500 is that $50 that we count. And they have to have any verification of employment earnings. So some of the things that we ask for bank statements to show what's in their account so that we can verify, because we allow a 500 liquid and non-liquid combined asset, but they can't have more than what is the standard of aid. And the standard of aid for GA is low. It's for an individual who looks like they're able to work, it would be 386. So if they have more than 386 in their bank account, or in the combined unemployment benefit, or any kind of gifts, more money on them, they would be ineligible, because they can't have more than the standard of aid in terms of any kind of income. So again, we would look at wages from self-employment, unearned income, such as gifts, loans, or tax refunds. We count all that. They have unemployment benefits. We require that they apply for those, because they are likely going to be more than GA. If they have retirement, even if there's a penalty for them to apply for the retirement, because it's an available source of income, we require that they apply for any retirement that they do have. And any, like I said before, apply for SSI, workers' comp, and state disability if they are eligible. Next slide. Okay. So the application. The application just consists of, it's many pages long form that talks about their income, property, a variety of questions. And it also concludes with an interview with an eligibility worker. It's, like I said, usually is over the phone. Aid cannot begin, so we can't issue any GA benefits until all conditions of eligibility have been verified. And this includes, for some people, they might have to apply for a social security number. We might have to verify their citizenship, or showing proof of legal immigration status. We have to verify their income and property. So we have to make sure that the car that they say they have, we oftentimes need to see the title, and then verify that it's under $4,500. And then if we need them to apply for UIB and SSI, then and they're denied those benefits, we need to have them show us verification, that a letter, or print out the form if they've done it over on the computer, to verify that they've been denied those benefits. And then, as I said before, things like income, if they have, even if they don't have money in their account, we do need, if they have a bank account, and if they have multiple bank accounts, we will need to have the statement, not just something from not just a list from the ATM. That has to be their actual statement. And sometimes we require them to, get that information from their bank, because it's something that we need to show, to verify that what they're saying is true, that they don't have money, or the money they have is verified as $50. Next slide. So when they apply, We usually require an identification such as a driver's license or identification card. If they don't have the money to get an ID card or a driver's license or an ID card, actually, they at most of the office, except for Antioch, they can request it's like a voucher type. It's a request to help them pay for the ID card. I think it makes it so they don't have to pay for it, so they can request that from their worker if they need the ID card, but they don't have money to pay for it. We request their social security cards or social security number, unless sometimes we have it on file because they've maybe applied for benefits before. So if we have it on file, we usually can use what we have on file. If they have any land or building owns, it may seem ridiculous, but we've had a variety of different types of clientele. And some people do have property, so we do need to show verification that they do own it or if they're co-owned. One of the big things that we really need, and we could use your help in getting, is the medical verification of disability. So if someone is disabled, we need verification of that. We have our own form, which is also on the GA website page, that is called the GA 341. It's the medical verification. And that is sent to their physician that they can fill out and answer the questions that basically let us know, they are disabled and kind of what some of their abilities are, if they're long-term disabled or if it's a short-term disability, but oftentimes we have a hard time getting those back from folks. We can also accept letters from a doctor if it's stating, we don't need to know their type of disability. We just need to know if it's long-term and if if it impedes their ability to look for work. So we have accepted certain doctor's letters, but it needs to have that specific information. And then the verification of the following types of property, which I kind of mentioned, which is the ownership of ownership of their vehicle, registrations for each car owned, or if they're co-owned or being bought or leased. We need taxes filed, especially, this is December. So in January, a lot of times people are getting their tax return back. We'll need to have verification of that so that we can know that that's part of the verification of income, because we do count their tax refund as part of their income. Like I said, with bank accounts, even if they're closed, if it's still showing that they have a bank account and they haven't actually closed it, we're going to need a letter from the bank saying it's closed. And I said before, bank accounts opened and the balance in the account from the first of the month through the end of the month. So if somebody applies today, we would need a bank account statement. Sometimes they don't have it. So if we're in today's 12/9, they might not have it. We would at least need the previous month's bank statement so that we can kind of verify what they're saying. And as I said, any other additional verification of income and property, which includes, some people have Venmo and Cash apps. We require some verification to show what's in that account. Okay. So at intake, they meet with their assigned GA worker and they complete the intake. And like I said, over the phone or by person. There's several things that they're going to complete. One is a substance abuse evaluation. And this is determining whether or not there needs to be a referral to the GA Alcohol and Drug Diversion Services, which is called GADS, stands for GA Alcohol and Drug Diversion Services. So if there are some indications based on the worker's observation, or if the applicant says that they've had drug issues in the past or alcohol issues in the past, then we would refer them to the GADS counselor, who would do their own assessment to determine, and we have to determine whether or not they need to go into some type of treatment. And usually it's an outpatient group. They meet weekly. And our contract with GADS is with the health services. So they're through behavioral health, and they come to all the district offices once a week. If an individual is disabled for 12 months or more, they have to be referred to the SSI advocacy program. That's part of our requirements, because if they're disabled for 12 months or more, that likely means that they have a permanent disability. So they need to apply for advocacy, and we'll refer them to the advocacy worker. And Renata and Rasan will talk about that later. If they're homeless, we have also a contract with the shelter beds in Central County and in West County. So, and if there's a bed available, we offer it to them. They can choose to decline the bed, and if they have good cause, then they will still get the housing allowance of the GA grant. A lot of times people don't want to go to the shelter because maybe they're trying to be clean and sober and they've noticed that there's some drug activity at certain shelters, or maybe they had a bad experience there. Oftentimes they may have a pet with them, and some of the shelters do accept pets, I think, but I think there might be a number that they allow. So that may be another good cause reason where they don't want to stay at the shelter. So if we don't have a shelter, they automatically get the monthly homeless assistance. But if we do have a bed and they're offered it, they can decline with good cause. Again, as I said, disabled, apply for SDI and SSI. If they're employable, they have to do a job search, and our job search is very minimal. They have to apply for 3 different jobs and show where they've applied, whether it's online or in person. And that form, I think, is also on the website. It's called job search form. Okay, thank you. Next slide. So I wanted to just explain a little bit about the levels in GA, because depending on the level you are will determine the amount of time that you can receive GA, and it will determine the monthly benefit that you can get. So if you're a level 1, that means you have no verifiable physical or mental disability, which precludes employment. And these people are eligible for 90 days in a 12-month time frame. So if they've already had 90 days within that 12-month time frame, then they wouldn't be able to apply for GA again until that 12-month period resets. There are other counties that don't have this time limit. Some counties, I believe San Francisco is one of them. Santa Clara might be one of them. Anyway, that don't have time limits, so they don't have that you have this 90 days within a 12-month period. But there are counties that do, and we're one of those counties. Individuals who apply for GA intake and don't indicate or provide verification that they have a disability, they're considered a level 1, and they're able to find and sustain gainful employment. So they would only be level 1. Like I said before, a level 1's for one person, if they're single and living alone, the most they could get is $336, and that's if they have a housing cost and food and personal needs, because our grants are split up into housing and personal needs. So if they are living somewhere where they don't have a housing need, so say they're living with their mom for free, then they would only get part of the grant, which would be $158, because they don't have a housing cost. So our grant is very low, which is why we really encourage people to, if there's other available streams of income, that they should try to get those, because the amount that they're going to get on GA is very small. And like I said, while receiving GA benefits for these folks, they're required to look for 3 jobs. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I kind of said some of the other things. So that's a level 1. You can move to the next slide. So level 2 individuals, they're considered to have temporary barriers to sustaining gainful employment. So these folks have to have some verifiable physical or mental disability, which precludes the ability to maintain sustained gainful employment. And the disability is expected to last less than 12 months. So it can be something like maybe like a broken leg. A lot of times our GADs, those people who've completed the substance abuse counseling, and when they've gotten a positive referral to GADs and then they're attending GADs treatment programs, oftentimes those people may be on GA for longer, but between 3 and 6 months. So our level 2s vary about the amount of time that they can receive aid. It's good to note that these folks, even though they're considered to have temporary barriers, they're still going to get the same grant that a level 1 is. So a level 1 and 2 both get the potential most amount. As a level 1 living alone would be $336, depending on what their needs are. And that would be for level 1 and level 2. The only difference is the level 2s have a longer time which they can be on aid. Okay. Okay. So, and like I said, they may receive up to 12 months. It just depends on what the verification of medical or mental disability shows, or how long they're participating in the GADS program. Okay, next slide. So level 3, and these are the folks who are unable to sustain gainful employment. These are people who are usually 65 or over, legally blind, or they have a verified physical or mental disability, which precludes any ability to sustain gainful employment. And this disability is expected to last at least 12 months or longer. So they don't have to be 65 or blind. There can be a variety of different things. We have a lot of folks who have, a variety of diagnosis, whether it's schizophrenia or bipolar, or they have a long-term illness that makes it hard for them to walk. We've had people on cancer. So it could be a variety of different things, but we need to have verification that they have this condition so that we can classify them as a level 3. So they can receive GA continuously while they're disabled. It just means that they're not able to look for work. So some of the requirements that we have on those folks who are able to look for work are lifted. As I said before, these individuals will be referred to advocacy for assistance in applying for supplemental security income, SSI. And like I said, we just want to emphasize they may receive 12 months or more. It just depends on what verifications we see. And then at every 12 months, they need to go through RRR, which is a recertification period, to make sure that they are still income eligible. And we also need the verification due every year. So to be able to continue them as a level 3, unemployable, ongoing. So we want to make sure that we got that every year. And then for, just so you get an idea, for someone who's unemployable and living alone, the grant is $375. And again, that's split up into a housing cost and a personal needs cost. So if they don't have a housing cost, the most that they could get, they're unemployable, is $176 if they're living somewhere for free. So again, that's why we require them to apply for SSI, because we want to make sure that they can get on some long-term, have some long-term financial assistance. We can provide with a very small amount until they find something else. Okay, next slide. When they apply for GA, they can also apply for Medi-Cal and CalFresh during this appointment. The worker can also sign them up for CalFresh and Medi-Cal. We provide emergency food services. We do have access to a pantry where we can give them some dry goods and clothes. We also have a clothes closet if they are needing some additional clothes, if they need sleeping bags for some of our homeless people. We have some things for those people. They just need to, the worker should investigate that. And if the worker doesn't, the applicant should, kind of let them know, I may need, if you have any resources. We provide substance abuse or use counseling and referral to that appointment, and that's through GADS. We also provide mental health assessment and referral to treatment. So we also have a contract with health services when we have a mental health counselor who's in the district offices 1 day a week, and she does the mental status assessments to determine, and she can also fill out our GA 341, determining their level of employability, which is that level 1, 2, or 3. So that's an easy way to get them their verified disability. So that's good that we have that because they can provide the verification that we need to grant them as a level 2 or 3. We provide job interview clothing, tools needed for employment, and other resources to assist individuals in securing employment. So one of the things we do is if someone is in some type of trade, we can provide those tools that go along with that trade. If they're maybe going to get a job, if they need help to pay off. We've had people who work for the union, and I think they have to pay off some back union dues in order to be eligible on the board to be able to get jobs for that year, for that day and ongoing. We can pay for union dues that are back. There are different things depending on what their situation is. We provide bus passes or bus tickets. A lot of time now we've gone to the Clipper cards, so we can't really provide Clipper cards, but we can provide a transportation stipend for folks, and that's usually for level ones who are employable. But if you have a level 3 who needs help with getting to appointments, we can also look at providing some type of stipend, transportation money on their EBT card to provide assistance with transportation. We provide homeless services such as I said, we have placement in a county shelter. We have hygiene kits available, sleeping bags, and other needs for the unhoused, and referral to the HDAP program that Rasan and Renata may talk about. Next. So this is your check your knowledge question. And it says, is someone on parole potentially eligible for general assistance?
Okay, so you can put your answers in the chat. A for yes, B for no. Seeing some answers roll in.
So
Looking
most of you
good.
got it right, it looks like, right, Jamie?
People are listening. Woo!
So
Go
yes,
team.
sorry, I was gonna answer a few questions. Do you want me to answer them now that I got on the chat?
Up to your team. I think we're good on time, actually. If you want to do some questions.
Okay. So the only time they would not be eligible if they're violating their parole. So if they're on parole, that's fine. There was a question, how do customers repay a GA loan if they're not diagnosed disabled? So they can repay it on their own if they want to. They would send a check, and we have a PO box that we would give them information to, but there's not a required way. We don't force them to pay it back. You know, it's up to them if they want to pay it back. There's no repercussions basically if they don't pay it back. It's only for those people who are get the SSI payment that we can actually collect on it. And it says for GA, if they do not own a vehicle, but lease or currently paid off, does it still have to be valued under 4,500? It depends on the encumbrances. So there's a process the workers have to go through to determine how much they paid off, how much they owe, and then what are the encumbrances. And then if it's not under the value, then they would have to include it with the 500, what they, you know, so if it was over 4,500 and they still owed money on it, we would go and look at like what's owed, what other income and resources do they have that equal the 500 to kind of, it's like a if and then. So we kind of have to look at 4,500 and then see what the situation is there, and then determine what amount is going to continue to be included in looking at the $500 of income and property limit. Does that make sense? It's a little bit of a confusing area a lot of times, but it just has to do with kind of what's owed and then what they've already paid off. And those are the only two questions I think I had.
Great.
Nancy?
Let's do the rest of your section, the rest of the benefits section, and then we can take some questions, and then we can talk about, we'll do the Bay Area legal aid section about denials. So maybe we'll go through this part, and then we can hold for some questions. Okay, so now we have Rasan. If you're talking, you're muted. Rasan, we can't hear you. Correct? Nobody else can hear? Okay.
Correct. Not here.
Nope, can't hear you now. What I can do is put the call-in information. Let's see if I can find it. We need to. Actually, can somebody else from our team, are you able to find the call-in information? Just looking to see how to do that. There we go. Hold on.
So what information, Jamie?
Just the call in. So maybe Rasan, if you want to try and like call in for audio, let's see.
Oh,
Like on your phone. Hold on 1 second. Here's the invitation. Hold on 1 second. Oh no, crud fritters.
Anyone able to hear me
Oh,
now?
yes.
All
Woo!
right.
Okay, we did it. Problem
All right.
solved. Great.
Troubleshooting. How many
You're
how
good.
many social workers does it take to get us on?
Oh my gosh. It's a Monday. Okay, go
Thank
for
you
it.
guys. I really appreciate it. Okay, so whoever's in charge of the slides, if you guys can go to the next one. Let's see here. Next slide, please. All right. So when a client comes in to receive general assistance benefits, as Magdalene stated earlier, a referral is made to advocacy sent by the eligibility worker when the client meets the following criteria. They have to be an adult over age 18. They have to be disabled, over 12 months, either for over 12 months or permanently. And they have to be in receipt of general assistance or CalWorks programs. So advocacy programs are only eligible for people who are receiving another cash aid program. Next slide. Okay, so when people come in to apply for SSI and disability, we usually give them an overview and let them know it's going to be anywhere from 18 months to 2 years before an actual decision, final decision is made. As you see at the initial application stage, it can take about 3 to 6 months for SSI to make a decision there. Then at the reconsideration appeal, which happens when the initial application is denied, they usually take another 3 to 6 months. Then there's the hearing request. That can take anywhere from 1 to 18 months for them to make a decision. Now, at this point, we have one of two options. Usually the legal representation that's involved will contact us as advocacy and say, hey, I don't feel like we can win this case. We'd like you to file a new claim and start all over again. Or they'll let the client know that they have the option of going to the appeals council, which is what you see the last option there is. However, they usually don't recommend people go to the appeals council level because it's just going to sit there for another 2 years. And then about 99% of the time, they usually come back with a negative decision anyway. So when we get to that point, we try to encourage clients to start a brand new application so that we can build their application and have it be stronger than it was before. Next slide, please. So this is the SSA review process. When we submit the SSI disability application, and as Marilyn said, or excuse me, as Magdalene said before, what we do is we cast as wide a net as possible. So when people come in, we apply for SSI, we apply for disability benefits, we apply for any retirement survivors disability benefits they may be eligible for if they were married to, say, a person who was in the military or if one of their parents was in the military. So once we actually do the application, the case is assigned to an analyst, as you see at the top there. On the lower left, it says then the case is sent to the Disability Determination Services, and they're usually located in either Roseville, Sacramento, somewhere out there. As social workers, we communicate with the analysts to make sure that the case has been received and to find out the status. We then begin collecting medical records and medical appointments with the clients. So we put out initial requests for medical records through every place that the client has identified that they've been seen. If they were disabled when they were a child, we actually can request pediatric records as well as school records. And then all of the medical appointments that the client has coming up, as Magdalene touched on, we make sure that they have either a stipend and transportation assistance to get to said appointment, whether it be through their general assistance or CalWorks grant, or we can contact the Department of Disability Determination Services to make sure that they provide the client with means of transportation, either an Uber or something like that. Then on the right-hand side, you'll see that we complete the SSA questionnaires and function reports. Those are also the work history reports, the adult disability reports, things of that nature. These are all reports that can be found on the SSA website, and clients are encouraged to go through them themselves if they can complete them at their leisure. But if they need assistance with any of these, we always make them aware that we're available to meet with them in person and help them complete these applications, or we can do so by phone. And as the last box states there, we also transport clients to all of their consultative examinations, or we provide public transportation to get to them. So for example, the consultative examinations are the appointments that Social Security and Disability have clients go to verify that they are indeed suffering from what it is that they say they're suffering from. The problem with these consultative examinations is they can be scheduled anytime, meaning on Sundays, they can be scheduled on holidays. As a matter of fact, I just had a client that was scheduled for one yesterday, and it was all the way in Livermore at 8 a.m. I've had clients be scheduled for appointments on the 4th of July at like 2:30 in the afternoon. So we're really at the mercy of where Social Security and Disability Determination Services schedule our clients. If it's not feasible for them to be able to get there, we do have to call on their behalf and ask if they reschedule them either somewhere closer or somewhere where it's more attainable. Sometimes, for example, they'll have clients scheduled to be somewhere like 8 o'clock in the morning, like in Sacramento, and that's just not realistic. Nobody can, if their clients on public transportation, there's no way for them to even get there at that time. So we just have to act on their behalf. Next slide, please. All right. So with regard to this applications and everybody being denied, I kind of want to walk people through and give you a couple of numbers to support what you see here. So the types of appeals that they listed there are, the first one is the reconsideration appeal. So about 67% of people who apply for initial application, who submit an initial application for SSI or disability, are going to be denied. That's just across the board. At that time, they have 60 days to submit what's considered a request for reconsideration appeal. The advocates will submit that request on their behalf. Again, as we saw from the previous slide, it usually takes them anywhere between 3 to 6 months to make a determination. About another 24% of people are denied at this level, which is what requires us, to file a hearing request. Now, at that point, we contact the client and let them know that the time has come for them to select a disability attorney. There's a disability attorney list that we send them with recommendations that they do their own research. We tell them we cannot support endorse any any person that's on our list. We recommend that they do their own research and then let us know who they'd like to go with. We then facilitate the client being able to hire their legal representation, whether it be taking them to that office or making sure they get whatever forms that they need in order to get hired, and then let them know that their attorney will be contacting them and what the process is from there. And then the final appeal it has on the list here is the appeals counsel. And as I stated before, that's usually a decision that the disability attorney involved will sit down with the client and say, hey, here's the cost benefits analysis. Do you think it would be in your best interest to go forward and wait another years for the appeals counsel? Or do you think we should start over again and try to build you a stronger case? So that's usually between the attorney as well as the client. The timeline, as it says, it gives us 60 days to file any appeals plus 5 days for mailing. If an appeal deadline is missed, good cause can also be requested. That usually happens with a lot of our hard to reach clients, especially our clients who are homeless, who have difficulty being contacted. Maybe their free telephone that they're provided, they usually lose them, or they have to get several of them over the course of many months. So it's very difficult for us to get in contact with them. So we routinely go past the 60-day timeline on our more difficult to serve clients. So we do submit a request for good cause in that case. And then how we do so, again, we go online to file. We can do office visits in order to request that. And we can also do it by snail mail. However, we have been told by Social Security that starting next year, they're going to be limiting the amounts of people that they allow to drop in. So you actually have to schedule an appointment to see someone face to face to be able to submit some of these appeals if you'd like to do it that way. 9 times out of 10, I do so online. When the system permits, I just do it that way. It's a lot faster, and most of our workers do it that way as well, but we all have our own individual styles. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the good stuff. So when a client gets their claim granted, let me backtrack a little bit. About 30 days after we submit a claim on behalf of the client, every time they start to receive mail from disability or Social Security, we as the Social Security, we as the social workers, the advocates, receive a copy of that correspondence as well. So with regard to this receiving letters in the mail, it says attending the financial and the perk appointment. So the perk appointment is the last appointment that the clients attend before they're actually granted their SSI benefits. Please don't ask me to tell you what the perk acronym stands for. I didn't know there was going to be a test today, so I failed that part. But it's basically a very comprehensive way of a worker sitting down with them and saying, hey, has anything changed since you submitted your application? Do you have any new forms of income? Do you have any new checking or savings accounts that you would like your benefits to be placed into? Just making sure that all of the T's are crossed and all of the I's are dotted, basically. So it says the client has 30 days to follow up with that perk appointment request. If they miss it, then they have 1 year from the date that they were supposed to have completed that appointment to get in touch with Social Security. If they don't, then the client has to start all over with a brand new application. This actually happens not very often, but we do see in the cases where clients have become incarcerated or may have been in a state hospital or something, and they just kind of completely dropped off our radar. Then when they get out of those facilities, they come back in to get on benefits, and they let us know, hey, this is where I was. We're like, hey, did you know you got this perk appointment? We've got 1 year from the date that you were granted in order to touch base with them. So that's what that's kind of referring to. And then on the right-hand side, it's talking about the representative payees. And these are the most common problems that we find based on our hard to serve population, especially here in Contra Costa County. Uh, Most of our clients don't have any friends or family that are willing to be signed up as payees. There are limited payee options, meaning unless a client is already receiving mental health services and is willing to go through that process, there's usually a payee that can be assigned if they're in receipt of some mental health services already. However, if they don't agree to do so, then our hands are tied. We can't establish a payee unless they agree to accept the mental health services as well, as it states at the bottom. And this problem is actually unique to Contra Costa County. Clients, if they were in Alameda County or Solano, are able to find payees. They have a more comprehensive payee list. However, in Contra Costa, we don't have that option, unfortunately. Next slide. HDAP. All right. Nice tent there. Okay. Next, or nice facility, whatever that is. So the HDAP program was established, and as it says here, we were established in partnership with H3 Core and EHSD. And so what we do is we provide housing placements for disabled and homeless clients. Individuals that have been homeless for more than 12 months in a 3-year period and have applied for SSI disability, and have already applied for SSI and disability. And diversion is also possible if an individual is already in receipt of SSI and is pending eviction. So we've had quite a few successes with the HDAP program. 300 plus referrals have been received since July of 2018, which is when we started. 140 individuals have been housed as of May 30th, 2023. And H3 in the HDAP program, we try to serve the individuals that are most at risk. So people who have been homeless for the longest period of time, people who are actually on the streets when the weather starts to get super cold and inclement as it is now. So that's really our core, our focus, is trying to reach those clients and get them off the streets and plugged into some other ancillary services as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. So this is our contact information for the wonderful advocacy staff that we have here. As you see, I'm located here in Pleasant Hill, which is the 925-655-1038 number, but I can also be reached in Antioch. If you are trying to get in touch with me and you'd like to leave a voicemail message, I would recommend the 655-1038 message number. It automatically goes to an email, and I usually return emails within 24 hours. All of our contact information is listed here for all of our wonderful workers, as well as our clerk and our supervisor, Renata Pierce. Next slide. I want to thank you all for your time and attention. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to try to jump in now, or you feel free to email them to me, and I'm very accessible, so I'll get back to you as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Thank you.
No worries.
And I think I want to take a pause right now and see if there are questions about any of the work that EHSD just presented before we move into the Bay Area Legal Aid presentation. So we have a little bit of time. So we can probably take 10-15 minutes if folks have outstanding questions.
Jamie, there were a couple questions in the chat. Can we
Great.
address those?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So there was a question about educational stipends. The question was, are education stipends counted against the IRT, which is the income reporting threshold for CalWORKs? And so this question can be interpreted twofold. So in regard to education stipends, we can either translate that as financial aid, which most financial aid is not counted in the CalWORKs application, but the individual would need to provide verification of that financial aid to their worker, who would then determine if the income is counted or is exempt. The other way we can translate that is educational stipends that are issued through the Welfare to Work Supportive Services that Roz covered earlier. And those education stipends are not counted in the CalWORKs or CalFresh income evaluations at all. Another question was if someone is trying to get emergency services and the worker's not answering the phone, is there a number they can call to ensure to speak to someone? Each worker does have a voicemail, so a voicemail message can be left, and that includes a primary number to call if the matter is urgent. However, the 866 number that was provided on these slides can also be called, and that is a queue that you can select various prompts, and that will take you to a live person, and that individual can direct the participant to a supervisor. And then the other question was for CalWORKs eligibility, does deprivation cover a family's eligibility if a co-parent is incarcerated? So if the parent's incarcerated, the eligibility worker will evaluate the specific eligibility of deprivation based on that parent's absence from the home. So it does depend on the duration of the incarceration and the circumstances. So the parent who is in the home would have to report that to their CalWORKs worker, who would look at the situation for that incarcerated parent and determine what the eligibility looks like and the deprivation for that CalWORKs eligibility.
And Candy, you had a specific question about a case, a very specific situation. So Nancy and I'll drop our email address, and if you could email us the customer that you're referring to, we would need their name. If they have their case number, that would be even better to include. If not, their date of birth, and of course their phone number, and then we will move that information forward to a supervisor to review and follow up.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have questions for any of the EHSD team before we move to the Bay Legal presentation? Checking chat. Okay. Oh, great. Do you see there's one from Aaron Lyons. What would and if an education stipend is counted or not? I have a client who has been denied for CalWORKs several times who has no other income.
So the educational stipend, if we're talking about financial aid, it depends on the source of financial aid for secondary education. And so the state and the federal government have determined what types of financial aid are exempt versus what types are counted. So if they have been denied and they feel that the type of financial aid they're receiving is exempt, they can always file an appeal, and we do encourage that. So the case can be reevaluated. But I'm assuming the education stipend is financial aid.
It is it's a stipend through Tipping Point. They receive, I believe it's $20 an hour, up to 20 hours a week for education services.
Okay, so it is not financial aid. It's to support, it's looked at as unearned income, it appears. But I'm not familiar with the income. I'm not familiar with Tipping Point. So I'd be happy to look into that a little bit more. But from what it sounds like in your description, it sounds like it would be counted as unearned income.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, well, we'll have Nancy and Rosalind have put their information in the chat. So I'm going to bring the slides back up and introduce Elsie from Bay Area Legal Aid. Okay, there we go. And Elsie, I will have you take it away. So we talk about what if your application is denied?
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Elsie Howell. I'm a staff attorney at Bay Area Legal Aid. I take cases in Contra Costa and Alameda counties, and I specialize mostly in the California public benefits. So that's, CalFresh, CalWORKs, General Assistance. We do currently have a much smaller Social Security practice in Contra Costa, but we do take a much smaller proportion of those cases as well. So I'm here to talk about, what happens if things go wrong? If it looks like you're not getting what you need, and, what are some steps to take from there? So just as a quick overview, some things that are very common things people tend to want to appeal. include denied applications. This can include verbal denials and failures to timely process applications. Those are definitely a little bit more rare, but they do happen from time to time. And it's important to note that both of those can be appealable. Even if your benefit is approved, there might be some things worth keeping an eye out for just to make sure that things are going the way they should be. So, the start date of your benefits, for at least for, CalFresh and CalWorks, I just forget GA off the top of my head. It is supposed to go back to your application date, and sometimes mistakes happen there. And also the calculation of the grant. Even if you've been on for a while, if you do get an overpayment notice, there can be certain things that might have gone wrong in that process. So that can be also something worth appealing. If your benefits have been reduced, same there. And especially for CalWorks, there are some auxiliary services that go along with that, as well as some of these other programs. And not getting those services can be something worth appealing. And of course, terminations if you think you've been terminated incorrectly. Next slide, please. So just a quick note on Social Security appeals, they have a very idiosyncratic process. So there are different steps you go through. There's the request for reconsideration, which is it can be submitted online. And goes for an informal conference. So essentially, you get to talk to somebody from SSA staff, discuss what's going on, explain your side of things, and go from there. You can file a hearing request. These can take quite a while. Social Security just moves a little bit slow sometimes, and they do have a lot of things they're processing. Just as give you a ballpark there, it could sometimes be a year or more even before the pandemic, and things did slow down a little bit more there as well, as they did for pretty much everybody. If you don't like that outcome, you can go to the Appeals Council review, which doesn't have a very high success rate. And for Social Security, it is important to remember that you got 60 days from the receipt of your notice to file your appeal. There's a 5-day grace period there. The Social Security assumes that people receive the notice 5 days after the date. So, if you're really down to the wire, 65 days from the notice date can work, but, sooner is generally safer. And the deadline for making sure your benefits continue is 10 days after the receipt of the notice in order to file. So when it comes to benefits administered through EHSD, some things to keep in mind is that, there are other ways that you can try to resolve these issues without necessarily needing to jump to an appeal. If you do have a good relationship with your worker and you can talk, you can reach them, then if it's an easy mistake or something very simple, that could just be a quick way to get it corrected. Of course, part of the rub is that everybody has a lot of cases, and sometimes you don't realize things until close to a deadline, and then the calculus might change a little bit. Julie Peck is also the ombuds person. Her email is listed there. She has certainly helped me, resolve some issues and get information before, and she can be quite helpful. So if you can't get these things adjusted quickly or before your deadline is passed, then you can still request a hearing. You can do this a couple of different ways. You can do it online. The address is listed there. That's the appeals case management system for the state fair hearings process. There's an option on there that allows folks to file an appeal without an account, and so you can just get your appeal filed there. You can also call the phone number listed on that webpage, and you can get the process going that way. It's important to note that for CalFresh and CalWorks, you have 90 days from the date of the notice to file your appeal. There is what's called there's like a good cause period after that, up to 180 days. Good cause is one of those legal terms of art, but basically, if you couldn't file within the first 90 days, you can still file your appeal up to 180 days. But you're going to need to discuss with a judge what took you that little bit of extra time and any life circumstances that might have caused some hurdles or some roadblocks there. A lot of common examples are things like illness, like within the family, becoming unhoused, things that disrupt your life or that make it harder to deal with others, less immediately urgent things. Although, as is always the case with good cause for late filing, that will ultimately be up to the judge. An administrative law judge will need to agree that it was a good reason to file late and decide that they have the ability to sort of get into what the underlying problem is. For aid paid pending, which is often important for folks, it's important to note that you need to file your appeal before the effective date of the proposed action in order to get aid paid pending. There can be some exceptions here and there, but it's a good rule of thumb to keep in mind. For general assistance, a very similar start. If you can reach your workers, sometimes it can just be, a very quick thing to sort out or a misunderstanding or miscommunication. You also need to submit a hearing request in writing. The address is listed here on the slide. And it's also important to note that general assistance is a little bit of a quicker deadline. Instead of 90 days, it's 30 days. So that is something important to keep an eye out for if somebody does, come talk to you about a general assistance worry or about a new action that's going to be taken for their case. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, as we touched on before, and just worth reiterating, it may be important to appeal right away, even if you're still within your general filing deadline. If you do want aid paid pending, which is essentially allowing the benefits to continue unchanged while the issue is being heard in a state fair hearing, then you're going to need to do that within 10 days for GA or before the effective start date of the change for CalFresh and CalWorks. There can also be good cause extensions here. It's just, once again, generally sooner is safer when it comes to those sorts of good cause exceptions. Next slide, please. People who are receiving public benefits do have, right to certain things, to be treated without discrimination, certainly, to language access. It's important to note, certainly for the CalFresh and CalWorks context, that, if you are going to a hearing, going before an administrative law judge and talking about the issue, they do need to have an interpreter present if one is needed. However, when it does come to certain written documents, there are, I think it's around a dozen core languages that things have to be translated into. While there are some ways to get assistance with getting the contents relayed to you, it's not always the case that written documents have to be translated. Folks also have the right to disability accommodations if needed, to confidentiality for their cases, to adequate notice, not just of the changes to their case, the terminations or reductions or denials or what have you, but also to things like hearing dates and times and who the county representative is and ways to contact them and try to work with them to get it resolved. Folks do have a right to file administrative appeal to challenge an action or inaction as the case may be. Next slide, please. Thank you. So some of the things that Bay Legal can offer, we do offer advice on all public benefits. Like I mentioned before, we do have a little bit more of a limited capacity for Social Security cases in Contra Costa, but we do take some of them. We do represent a lot of folks, especially terminations or denials. If there's an overpayment or an overissuance, then that is, also something we do represent on. That just might be a little bit more context dependent. As with all of our services, it is ultimately, also dependent on, how many cases we have right now and how many people we're actively helping. Sometimes, unfortunately, more folks, want long-term help than we can provide, but we do at least try to give advice on everything and then longer-term representation if we can. Alameda County also has more of an expansive Social Security practice. We also have a youth regional project, so for young people who need help and support. We also in Contra Costa offer re-entry, which is essentially if folks have been arrested or incarcerated in the past and they're facing impermissible, prejudice or barriers to, services, getting ID. I know that often sometimes folks have trouble getting like driver's licenses or things like that. That's something you can reach out to us about, and if we can, we'll do our best to help. And we also have the Health Consumer Center. So, if you are having issues with, your medical insurance, whether that's certainly if it's public and even for some private insurance issues, we can help with that. And so that's also worth, calling in about to see if we can give a hand. Next slide, please. Just some basic contact information for us. We do have an office in Richmond. It's at 1025 McDonald, and that is the general number for the Richmond office. We've also got the legal advice line and the Health Consumer Center numbers listed here. The Health Consumer Center is, well, sorry, let me back up a second. The legal advice line is a very good first stop for folks if they're looking to, talk to an attorney or get some advice to sort of tide them over in the meantime between, now and getting a more fulsome appointment. But basically, the legal advice line is staffed by attorneys and advocates who have, expertise and knowledge in a very wide range of issues. So, if you know what your issue is, that's great. That can be a good place to call in and see if you can get set up for some longer term help. And even if you just, have some things going on and you're not sure if we can help, but you want to check, that can also be a good starting place. And then the Health Consumer Center is the same general idea. It's just a little bit more specialized. So, if you know that you've got a medical issue or an insurance issue, that would be the place to start. Next slide, please. Okay. So I know we went through that a little quick and there's a lot to take in there, but just a quick question for the chat. What types of issues should you request an appeal on? A, only Social Security. B, only denied applications because overpayments cannot be appealed. C, anytime a notice is issued. Or D, when in doubt, file an appeal on any negative action or inaction taken on the case, no matter which benefit you are receiving. And I'll give folks a minute to go in and type in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of C's, and I do appreciate the enthusiasm there. Yes, so I would say that the answer to that is D. So just it is important to note that a lot of times when people receive a notice, nothing bad is happening. A notice does not, immediately mean that something negative has happened in a case. Sometimes, benefits can go up. You can get notices for recertification, semi-annual reports, things that are required and that folks do have to do. So I would say that if a notice is issued, it's definitely always worth taking a look at. If you see that you've got one, you want to see what action is being taken or, what they're asking you, what's being asked of you, and then make sure it looks right. But yes, if you are in doubt about any of that, or if you know that you've had, a decrease, or you did need like a common example would be sometimes folks will report, like losing a job or something like that, or a loss of income. And that should normally, well, depending on the circumstances, that can cause an increase in benefits. And so, sometimes that takes a little bit longer to process than is ideal. And so just keep an eye out for those things, and and try to keep the appeal deadlines in mind. In addition to being in doubt, it's also important if you're getting close to your 90 days or your 30 days, filing can be a good stopgap measure. At least for state fair hearings and for GA hearings, if you file an appeal because you want to make sure to protect your hearing rights, because you just want to make sure that if there is a problem, you can get it resolved, then even if you do some more checking and it turns out that everything is correct or is the way it should have been, you can always withdraw that appeal. And it's generally a safer idea to protect those hearing rights if you're getting close to that deadline. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, so if you do have questions about appeals in particular, I'm happy to do my best to answer them. I know this was a very sort of high level overview of what appeals are. So, if folks do have questions about either, what to appeal or what the process looks like, I'd be happy to answer those.
I had a quick question. This is Magdalene, the GA program analyst. I don't know if I heard it right. Did you say GA only had 10 days to appeal?
Oh, no. So for general assistance, it's 30 days to appeal, and I believe it was 10 days for aid paid pending, but
Okay,
please
okay.
correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
I just, yeah,
mistaken.
thank you. I just might have, yeah, thank you. I just want to clarify, make sure that I heard that right. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's
Per-
very possible I misspoke too, so thanks for pointing it out.
No, thank you. Bye.
Anybody else? Other questions? You can drop them in the chat or raise your virtual hands. So while folks are thinking, I'm just going to note, so we always do a short survey at the end of our trainings to see if how the trainings went for you. Are they meeting your needs? Do you have other information you want? We will also send this link out with the materials, but wanted to ask folks, while you're here, before you pop off, to take a minute and fill out the survey. We will send out all the slides that has the contact information for the presenters. We're also going to send out a link to the actual training itself. But we're done with our formal piece, and so we can hang out here just for a few more minutes if folks have questions, things that you are still marinating on. We can hang out here for a little bit. And I thank you all for spending your Monday morning with us. And thank you to our presenters. Very thorough. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. If you don't have any questions, you're welcome to go. Just please take a minute to fill out this survey here. Otherwise, you are liberated and you have 8 minutes of your day back. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us, Jamie. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Mhm.
good rest of your day. Happy holidays.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to close us out. Thank you all. Have a good Monday.